Hey guys, thanks for checking in on the NFN Radio News Podcast, brought to you by notfakenews.biz. I'm Bob Gaddy, editor and publisher of Not Fake News. As we've been stuck at home during this long pandemic, a lot of us have experienced changes in our mental outlook, in our moods, if for no other reason than simply being frustrated and bored. There's a research company called the NPD Group that actually has looked at all of this and found that a whole bunch of us have turned to snacking as a way to fill the voids created by sadness, boredom, stress, and other moods. In fact, NPD reports that the average U.S. consumer ate more than 37% more snack foods and treats while feeling sad or depressed during the pandemic than they did in 2019. That's incredible, and it can't be good for us from a nutritional health standpoint. So for this episode of the NFN Radio News Podcast, I'm talking with Darren Seifer. He's an NPD food and beverage analyst and a guy who makes it his business to track trends like this so food companies know how to respond. Take a listen to Snacking Through the Pandemic from notfakenews.biz. Darren, thanks for joining us. I really do appreciate it. This whole issue of people having to deal with the pandemic, being shut up at home and not having the ability to go out and enjoy events and whatnot, has got to play havoc with their state of mind and their mood. And I see that the NPD group has a study that talks a little bit about that. Can you tell us a little bit about how the pandemic has affected the consumption of snack foods?
Yeah, and what we're finding, which probably makes a lot of sense, is that the mood consumers are in has a pretty direct impact on the snack foods or treats that they're reaching for. So during the pandemic, we saw a sharp increase in consumers saying that right before they had their snack food or their treat, that they felt bored. Some even felt depressed. And so that was up sharply from 2019. And conversely, we saw people telling us that they are not quite as often feeling like they're in this normal state. So just all of it's completely understandable with everything that just went on in this past year. When we overlay the foods and treats that people typically have within these different moods, you see things like sweet goods, ice cream, basically indulgent items come up a bit higher when people are feeling bored, even depressed. And so it's almost as if during the pandemic, consumers were treating their mental states by snacking and treating, just giving themselves a mental boost to help them deal with the extra boredom and even the extra tasks that they're dealing with in the home.
That's got to be a good thing for the snack food industry, but I wonder what the impact is on people's health. I know in my own case, I have become absolutely addicted to ice cream, and I think it started maybe having been cooped up. Started eating, Talente. I love Talente.
Right.
and it's gotten to the point I picked up some weight. Now, is that the snack food industry? That's not their really concern, I don't suppose. But that's really not a good thing, is it?
Well, consumers went through a journey as they went into lockdowns, and then the lockdowns dragged on. So, yeah, absolutely. At the beginning, we saw consumers indulging not just on things like ice cream, but sweet baked goods as well. And not just store-bought, but also consumers were increasingly making homemade sweet baked goods. Help them pass the time, help keep kids engaged in the home. But as lockdowns dragged on longer than I think most people expected them to, consumers started to gravitate towards better options. So it was still an indulgent item, but maybe it was a lower sugar version or a lower fat version. So consumers realized that if they kept on that pace, that they would probably have some health issues, but they still needed to feel indulged because of the boredom and the stress that they were dealing with. So they went for better options as it dragged on, as a way to help mitigate some of those health concerns. I will say that NPD also tracks more than just food, and our apparel group did note that consumers who are shopping for new clothing these days, more than more than some of the other ones, are looking for bigger sizes compared to 2019. There are a sizable group of people who are downsizing their clothing, but more people are looking for bigger sizes right now.
I wonder if there's a relationship between that and the snack food consumption.
There's, I don't know if it's all about the snack foods and the treating. There's also the other meals that consumers were making in the home as well. So it's all contributing.
Well, I'm
And
sure.
let's not forget that gyms were closed too.
Yeah,
So the availability of just getting a workout in was diminished for many Americans.
that's true. I mean, I can just look at me. Uh, I was going to the gym on a regular basis. The pandemic hit, the gym closed. I thought, oh, I know, I'll get myself an elliptical machine, right? So I got myself an elliptical machine. It's right behind me. I don't know. Well, our listeners can't see
Yeah,
it, so
right.
trust me, it's right behind me. And I was pretty regular in using that thing. And then that started to wane. The ice cream consumption began to pick up, and a little bit more on the old waistline, all of which makes you feel less energetic to get back on the elliptical machine.
Right.
It's a vicious cycle that I guess I know that I'm dealing with, and I don't know if other people are. I suspect they are.
Yeah.
Now, is this, though, increase in snack food consumption something that the snack food industry is really looking at and deliberately capitalizing on? Do you know?
Well, they're certainly responding to consumer demands, right? So,
That's what they do. I mean, that's
right,
their job, right?
right,
Yeah.
right. And so, consumers were one of the big strategies that they had at the beginning of the pandemic was just having enough snack foods on hand.
Right.
It actually was a practical strategy when you think about it. Many snack foods are shelf stable. They last on the shelf for a long time. And,
Right.
at the beginning, we just didn't know how long it would take before we could safely go back to the grocery store. So
Right.
if you had a lot of perishable items at home, well, that means you probably have to go to the store much faster. So snack foods was a way not only to keep people entertained, but also a way to keep your pantry full at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I see here in this press release from NPD Group, it says, of all moods, being sad or depressed had the most impact on snack food and treat consumption, but boredom followed closely, increasing snacking by 33%. In addition to being sad, depressed, or bored, consumers tended to eat more snack foods and treats when they were cranky,
Hmm.
stressed, anxious, calm, and relaxed.
Yeah. So
But
so
consumption declined when they were happy, and so on.
so consumption during those moods increased 33%. There was a corresponding decrease in snacking while people felt normal. So snacking did
Oh,
increase a little bit. So it's not like snacking increased this massive amount,
oh,
but the
okay.
moods that we were in shifted dramatically, and that
I
had the
see.
impact on what we grabbed from our pantries.
That's interesting. So there was an increase of 33% in snacking when people were feeling sad and depressed and
Yeah,
bored.
yeah.
But that was counteracted by a decline when they were feeling good and happy and and or even it says tired or just normal.
Right,
Uh,
right. When we're more
yeah,
likely to have some better
yeah.
for you options out there.
Do you have any idea then what the overall net increase might have been during this past year of the pandemic in snack food consumption?
Well, when we're looking at snacking occasions, so just snack foods just eaten on their own outside of a main meal occasion, it increased a few percentage points in terms of occasions. It doesn't
Uh,
sound like very much, but when you consider all the times that we have to eat at the home,
right,
and we have more dinners that we need to make in the home, and more lunches that we need to, and more breakfasts that we need to make in the home,
right,
it
right.
all bubbled up.
Yeah. I know one of the things that I did was I bought a bread machine.
That was very popular at the very beginning of the pandemic. There was
Yeah.
a week where it's the increase in bread maker sales was 800% up versus the prior year. Now,
Wow.
obviously, it mitigated since then, but yeah, consumers were worried about bread at the store, and
Yeah.
that led to a run on things like flour. But eventually, the supply caught up,
Right.
and I do think that consumers are going to go back to getting store-bought bread.
Right.
The bread makers, I feel, was a way to kind of be a little, um, take it on as a little bit of a hobby,
Right.
perhaps. I
Right.
don't think it's going to be the main way that consumers are going to go back to getting bread, though.
Well, maybe not, but it is for me. I haven't bought a loaf of store-bought bread since I bought that bread machine. And matter of
Hmm.
fact, yesterday I made the very best Italian loaf that I've made since it started.
Sounds amazing.
And now that has nothing to do with the topic and it's probably boring our listeners half to death. But anyway, that's what I get to do on this podcast. So,
Yeah.
so is there an expectation that going forward that snack food consumption will moderate, will decline, or will it just be in a different setting?
Yeah. Yeah, I think the situation in which people will be having snacks and treats is going to shift in the coming years. First off, we're going to be more social. We're probably going to be more social. Let me couch that.
Right,
And so that means the bigger bowl of chips. So it's not just your immediate family and maybe your one or two friends that you feel safe with.
right,
You might have some bigger gatherings at your home now.
right,
So more of this sharing of snack foods,
right,
providing it to one another.
right,
So we're definitely going to see that. We predict there's going to be continued strength on the savory side of snacking as well. Because look, as consumers were welcoming ice cream and all those treats at the beginning of the pandemic, sugar is still the top item that consumers are concerned about consuming. So I think there's going to still be some headwinds for the sweeter side of snacking and treating themselves. So that's why savory is still going to continue to do well. Another thing that we're also predicting is generationally speaking, Gen X actually is situated at a life stage when they're satisfying the needs of their kids, themselves, maybe even some older relatives in their lives. And so we're looking to see some growth out of that generation. It's not something you really hear much these days. It's a generation that's often overlooked because of its size, but I think it's a generation that can't be overlooked any longer for this purpose.
So, if you were a snack food, here I am putting my old hat back on from when I used to write for write about the snack industry for industry publications.
Yeah.
But if you were putting your if you were looking at that as a snack food manufacturer, what would you see as the opportunity then?
I would definitely want to make sure that I'm keeping a pulse of the mood that consumers are in, because that will tell me what consumers are going to be grabbing, what they're going to be eating, what they're going to gravitate towards. So that'll let me know, hey, do I need to invest or promote the savory side of things, or do I need to push more indulgent flavors to help consumers along if they really want to treat themselves even further? Um, I would continue to focus on the generational differences and the life stages that consumers are going through right now. So when you look at our millennial generation, they're still forming their families, and that's a key time for snacking behaviors. Little kids, parents are making sure that their kids are eating, and part of that is through snack foods. At the other end of the spectrum, the baby boomer generation, that's a life stage when we typically snack at a relative high in our lives as well. But the needs of boomers are a little bit different. They start to take on ailments, and so things like heart health, gut health are going to be important, but they also stress indulgence at the same time. So just really understanding the needs of each generation is going to be key, and understanding the moods as we try to emerge from this COVID era.
For the consumer, for the listener to this podcast that doesn't know what savory means, what does that mean in the
So
snack?
that's basically, when we talk about savory, we're talking about your salty snacks.
Salty
So chips, pretzels, meat snacks, basically if it's not sweet.
Okay. So like the bowl of popcorn that I make, that I put butter on with Romano cheese.
Sure.
That
Yep.
would be savory, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's very
My mouth
savory.
is watering right now.
It's very savory. Are there increasing options for consumers for healthy snacks or healthier snacks? Before Darren answers that question, we're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back with his response. So, Darren, tell us about healthy snacks.
Yeah, you just need to look at any grocery store and you'll see things like nuts and seeds. But even outside of those categories, you'll find some special labels that tout that it was either organic or that it had some extra ingredient that has a health benefit. Some of the things that we've seen consumers gravitate towards this year are things like elderberry, moringa. Um, Actually, many of the substances that consumers increasingly tried this year had immunity benefits. And that's probably not a big surprise given what we all just went through, but it was like consumers were using these foods and the ingredients within these foods to make their bodies ready in case they were infected. Now, I think that too, I think is going to change as we emerge through COVID. This notion of food as medicine will still be with us, but I think the focus is going to shift maybe a little bit away from immunity, and maybe we'll use those properties if we have the occasional illness. But again, with the baby boomer generation aging, I think things like gut health, bone health, brain health, things that help them along that journey are going to be the things that they're looking for as well.
So you can buy snack foods to help with your brain?
Well, if it has the right substances in them, we talk about the omega 3s and other substances like that. But it's the health benefits that many consumers are reaching for these days, regardless of where it's coming from.
All right. Well, that's all very interesting. Did the snack food industry increase its ad budget during the pandemic?
Uh, Honestly, I don't know about that one. I just don't have information on that. We focus on what the consumer is doing. So if those ad budgets did increase and connect with them in the ways that they're seeking, then that was probably a smart move on their behalf.
Right. Is there anything else that the consumer's telling you with regard to not only snack foods, but any other change in food habits that have occurred since or during the pandemic? Anything else that you could point to?
Overall, during the pandemic, it's really been about home prepared meals as restaurants became unavailable. Restaurants have slowly been making their way back, but we're still below 2019 levels in terms of traffic to restaurants. And so convenience has really been the name of the game for consumers these days. You mentioned your bread maker, but appliances were a really big hit in 2020, and they're still selling like hotcakes in 2021. Things like air fryers that help consumers, eat toast, that it helps them fry, and any device that helps consumers make the increased number of meals that they're dealing with in less time has been the game changer for them. And so I think that manufacturers should also be aware of these appliances that are coming into homes now to help them understand how to use them. So for instance, when you look at packaging, it says how to use things on your stovetop, how to use things in your oven, but rarely does it mention many of these new appliances that are in people's homes. I mean, air fryers are in about 40% of homes now, but you rarely see that on the instructions.
Including mine. And I bought one just before the COVID thing hit. But I have to tell you that it's gotten a workout and since then.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons is because of the perception, and I don't know if it's really true, but the perception that stuff you make in that air fryer is a bit healthier than if it was fried in oil.
Deep fried, right.
Yeah. For example, fried shrimp. I mean, we buy, frozen fried shrimp that's breaded, right? You got a choice. You can either put them in the air fryer or you can fry them in oil of some sort.
Right. Well, another thing that came about was we saw the increased importance of leftovers with consumers. We've been asking consumers since the lockdowns began, what are your strategies? And the biggest one is about avoiding food waste. So it's about maximizing your spend. And when you're thinking about how do you have things like fries the next day, how do you have them come out good? Well, the air fryer is a big part of that because it actually, I've done this personally with my air fryer. It really makes it close to the way it was the original day that you had it.
Right.
So that's not only about convenience, it's about flavor and saving the consumer money.
Yeah. Okay. This was really good. Is there anything else you think that our listeners should know about snack foods and what they might be looking to in the future?
Yeah, the future is bright for snacking in treats. Just make sure you're paying attention to the shifts that's happening, both generationally, both in the moods, and you could make sure that you're connecting with consumer demands, and you'll be in good shape.
You're talking to the manufacturer now.
Yeah, in that case, yeah.
Now, in terms of the consumer, what can the consumer look to in terms of anything new or interesting going forward?
Well, I mean, they'll depend on the innovation that comes out from the manufacturers. So, the consumer is the biggest force in change when it comes to this industry. They're the ones who really drive the innovation because it's all about their demands. So if they demand it and they do it loud enough, industry will respond and will meet their needs.
Okay, Darren, I thank you very much for taking this time. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. Enjoyed it.
Thanks, Darren. Great info for our listeners. And thanks to you guys for stopping by the NFN Radio News podcast. I hope you enjoyed it and you'll come back on a regular basis. It'd be great if you'd follow NFN Radio News so you don't miss an episode. And check out notfakenews.biz too, where you'll find new material just about every day by some excellent writers with perspectives on a whole range of topics. You can sign up as a member at notfakenews.biz. And of course, it's all free. And let your friends know about this podcast and about notfakenews.biz. Our goal is to be informative and entertaining as we comment on the latest developments in the news, with just a little lean to the left. Now this is Bob Gaddy signing off for NFN Radio News and notfakenews.biz.